Thanks for joining us for another edition of The Small Business Show with Jim Fitzpatrick.
Hey everyone, Jim Fitzpatrick. Thanks so much for tuning in to another edition of the Small Business Show right here at ASBN.com. One of the most often overlooked factors in the success of your business is your employees' experience. So it's critical to invest in your team. That's right, you have to invest in your team. A new book set to be released on June 6th titled The Experience Mindset, Changing the Way You Think About Growth, was written by global customer growth and innovation evangelist at Salesforce. I know you know that name. Miss Tiffani Bova is the author of the book. Tiffani joins us now to explain how an increased focus on employee experience could magnify your growth. Tiffani, thank you so much for taking the time into your very busy schedule there at Salesforce to join us on the show.
Of course, Jim, there's no place I'd rather be. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So let me start by asking, what was the motivation behind writing this new book? And congratulations on it, by the way.
Thank you. It is my second. I swore I would never do it, but here we are. You know, what getting locked down for a couple of years will do.
There you go.
It was really been a journey for me, actually. You know, I spent a good 15 years looking at how companies organize around growth, the things they do in sales, marketing, and customer service across small business, startups, all the way to global enterprises. And in full transparency, I really missed the employee part of that equation. And so it was a number of years ago, I was standing on stage and I said, I didn't think it was a coincidence that Salesforce is a great place to work, one of the most innovative companies in the world and the fastest growing enterprise software company.
Sure.
But could I prove it, right? Because if you're really innovative, it means your culture and your people are very happy and engaged.
Right.
And if you could get those two things right, what does it do to growth? And that sort of took us down a 2-year research project, and the culmination of that was the output, the Experience Mindset.
Wow, that's fantastic. Well, congratulations on it. Let's kind of jump right in here. Talk to us about some of the key takeaways that you want the reader to leave with.
You know, one of the things that I found, I guess, inspiring and disturbing at the same time was many executives, and again, it was across the gamut of all sizes companies, as well as around the globe, that we saw that many don't pay as much attention to their employees as they do to the customers.
Yeah.
And we definitely saw that when it was in part-time work, retail specifically, and we looked for areas by which companies could get better on the employee side, those that had the greatest impact on the customer. So for example, if you have a business and it has a call center, you know, do your call center agents have access to all the systems and tools they need to serve your customer?
Right.
I was talking to a small business a few weeks ago. They literally told me it took their call center agent 20 minutes to do a return. And so you figure, like, if I had to do 10 returns a day, that's a lot of time. And I don't know if that kind of work gives joy or meaning to the people doing the work. You know, so there are pieces and parts of what your employees have to work with.
Right.
Their systems, the technology, the integration, data, access to that. That all has meaning and impact on how satisfied and willing your employees are to go that extra mile, not only for your company, but for your customers.
That's right. That's right. You know, it's the old adage that take good care of your people and they'll take good care of your customers. But companies have a tendency to forget that, right? I mean, but at the core of it, that's what it's all about.
Well, listen, Jim, as you pointed out, I am not the first to say happy employees, happy customers, get those two things right. You're going to have greater growth rates.
Right.
But we couldn't find any data or any research that we could point to that says, but if you are going to try to improve that virtuous cycle, right, the goodness you get on the employee side to the customer side, where do you begin?
Right.
And that's what we really leaned into. We tried to uncover what are the things that employees have to deal with every day that has the greatest impact on their ability to do what you want them to do at that moment that matters when they're in front of a customer.
That's right.
A service technician, a retail sales rep, a call center agent, anybody.
Why are companies missing the boat if they're handling, you know, their workplace culture and their growth goals separately?
We've over pivoted to the customer, meaning a lot of things we did and making it easier for customers to buy from us. Buy online, pick up in store, buy online, ship to your home, all the things that you talk about all the time. We've spent a lot of money and time and resources on reducing the effort for our customers to do business with us.
Right.
But the unintended consequence of that over pivot has been we've left the employees behind on what they need to actually deliver those compelling experiences.
Sure.
The fastest way to get customers to love your brand or your company is to get employees to love their job.
Right. It's pretty simple, isn't it? However, there are companies out there that are reluctant to do it. And when you talk about something like this particular topic with executives and leadership at companies, right away they think, this is the stuff that's going to cost us money, that we've got to hire more people and we've got to listen to our employees about where the big rub is, and that we've got to make changes, and this is going to add to our bottom line and not increase our bottom line. I should say add to our cost or an expenses and take away from our bottom line, right?
Oh, Jim, you are so correct. When we were sharing this, when I was sharing it around the world, I was doing, it was kind of during the lockdown, I was doing hundreds of Zoom calls with executives around the world. And the first thing I would hear was what we just talked about. If it's so obvious, why isn't everyone doing it?
Right.
But the second thing I heard was what you were just mentioning, is this cost. And the answer back to that, and let's just pick career development as an example. There's no shortage of conversation about how and where GPT and AI will be used by businesses of all sizes. Are you investing in learning about that for your business? And if you are you going to invest in retraining your people and how to use that technology to better their role and their communication and their writing of emails and things like that? And so if you are worried about the expense of reskilling, what about the expense of not training your people?
That's right.
Which is worse? That they don't know how to do something, and so when a customer calls, they don't know the answer, or they don't know where to find information, or they're spending time on this monotonous, redundant kind of responses that could be very easily and quickly answered by automation or a bot or GPT. Yeah. And it's not to remove the human, by the way. I'm not advocating for that. It's human and technology, not human alone, not tech alone.
Right. That's a very good point. Doesn't necessarily mean people are going to be losing their jobs over it. It actually means that their job and their duty will, and their workload will be enhanced by it, not eliminated from it. Right.
Yeah, there was a study not done by us recently that came out that said that a call center had actually deployed GPT and AI, and they saw a 14% improvement in productivity.
Wow.
And when we looked at sales organizations that were using AI, we saw them actually increasing headcount, not decreasing headcount, because the more efficient and productive they became, guess what happened? They grew. They grow, get more profitability, they can make more investments for more people. Exactly.
From your perspective, whose responsibility is it to own the employee experience at a company?
Great question, because that was the third thing that I heard from the executives I shared, right? It became this, well, wait a second, who owns it?
Yeah.
And right now we saw 3/4 of companies, nobody owns it, which is also not good.
It's kind of one of these.
It's one of these.
But me. I don't own
right?
it, but it's got to be someone else.
Right. And not only did they not own it, the worst part about it was they were surveying their employees, they were capturing that information and doing nothing with it.
Ugh.
So nobody owned it, and then nobody was doing anything. Yeah, and you wonder why there was the great resignation and quiet quitting. Employees are like, look, I've been saying these things aren't working, or I'm not happy, or I'm burnt out, or I need to do these 14 things that I don't need to do anymore.
Right.
No one's listening to me. So the who owns it question, while correct, I called it the experience mindset on purpose. Mm-hmm. This isn't about a land grab and ownership and sphere of control and budget and headcount. This is about the company shifting its mindset to say, if we are going to do something for our customers, what is the intended or unintended consequence to our employees?
Right.
If you just take a pause for a moment and realize that when you do something to make it really easy for the customer and it increases the workload for the employee, that's where you start to get those inefficiencies, unhappiness, disengagement. And, according to Gallup and so many others, right, for a decade, a majority of us have been disengaged at work.
Yeah.
So there are reasons why the great resignation and quiet quitting should not be a surprise to many. I think that the pandemic cracked open the fact that we've not made the right and necessary investments. So this is a mindset shift, not a land grab on control.
So are you saying that ESI is just as important as CSI in this situation? You have got to have employee satisfaction index strong and therefore it's going to reflect in the customer satisfaction index. And therefore, because I agree with you, there's so many executives, maybe myself included, we focus so much on that customer experience. And we think that the team will come along. They understand. They share in our culture of taking good care of the customer. But so often, it's just not the case. We forget about the team. We forget about the employee. And before you know it, we're in trouble. And all of a sudden, those seats start turning over. And we're looking for, a whole new team to come in because we've just worn these people out, right? And that's a real issue right now.
Well, you nailed it. How many of you actually track CSI as an example, right? So customer satisfaction index or net promoter scores or customer effort scores, any kind of KPI, key performance indicator that is focused on the customer that you track. Do you have a correlating KPI for the employee?
Right.
So if you're going to track, to your point, Jim, right, CSI on this, right, customer satisfaction index, are you tracking employee satisfaction index? And if you were paying attention, did you notice that, let's just say your customer satisfaction index starts to dip? Well, is your employee satisfaction index dipping at the same time? So
right.
If your employees are not happy,
that's right,
and they're not engaged and they're not satisfied, it manifests itself in poor satisfaction for your customer.
That's right. It could be argued that it's the easiest to do it in small businesses versus trying to turn a ship of thousands of employees. I mean, because a lot of this really has to come from the C-suite or the owner of the company or the CEO down. That individual that sits at the helm of that company says, here's what we're going to do moving forward with regard to how we're treating and listening to our teams and our staff, our employees. That's very easy to do in a small business. And I agree with you. To your point, it's even more important in a small business that these team members and these employees are on the same page and are happy doing what they're doing, right?
Yeah, it could be really have huge negative impact. If you're a small business, let's say you're a retail storefront and you can't get staff, you can't be open. Otherwise, you're open, working 24/7. I've seen many, even restaurants say, we're not going to open for dinner anymore. We're only going to open for breakfast or lunch, or we're not opening for breakfast anymore. I only can get staff for lunch and dinner. So, there is a talent shortage and a talent crisis here. And so you can, as a first thing to do, go and ask your existing employees, what 1 or 2 or 3 things could I do to make you more engaged, more willing to come? And while you may anticipate, for some of you, it might be, I want to work from home forever, right? Or I want more pay, I want more comp. Those things, while true, you're going to uncover the fact that there are things that you could actually control to the point you just made, Jim. So there are small steps you can take that have measurable and meaningful impact to the people who work for you. And if you start to do that, guess what happens? They're far more engaged. And by the way, they're willing to go that extra mile for you and for the customer when you could start to get those things aligned.
That's right. We talk about customers being the big fans, but that first has to begin with your employees being the big fans of your company and believing in what you're doing. And I would also say that when you ask those questions, and it's a great question, what are the 3 things that I can do to enhance your experience and to make your job easier, and you're listening. And for those business leaders out there that say, well, I don't want to ask that because they're going to go right to money. Yeah, you need to pay me more. I would venture to say that's less than 10% of the people that are going to respond by saying, oh, let's talk about my compensation. I think what you're going to find pleasantly is to say, oh, there's a couple of things that we can talk about, and it's not money related. Maybe it's process related. Maybe it's time related. Maybe it's a couple of other things, in the workings of that company inside that can be easily tweaked to take better care of that customer, and compensation is not going to be on that list. Would you agree with that?
It is on the list, but it is not number 1, 2, or 3, right? It falls in there. And look, it's a tough time right now. So I don't want to minimize the fact that people are trying to earn a living for their families and things like that.
Right, exactly.
Vitally important. But I will tell you, in the retail example, we saw marked differences between part-time and full-time employees. There was a difference, right? And those that were more satisfied and engaged were full-time, right? They weren't transactional part-time employees.
I can see that. That makes sense.
But when we looked at what were the areas that they started to improve, and by the way, in this particular case study, it was a 1,000 storefront retailer in the U.S.
Wow.
And we looked at the information of what they were doing to improve employee experience. When they got it right, the hourly revenue per head per store employee went up 50. an hour.
That right there, you might as is that the first is that the first page in the book?
It's sort of the mic drop,
that isn't
right?
enough for somebody to hear
That's chapter 3.
Hear
That's
this
chapter
message
3.
and listen to it, because I agree with you. We get so tied up in taking good care of the customer and adding to the bottom line, and what do the revenues look like, and what are the what's the EBITDA look like, and all of these things. And meanwhile, you keep just grinding these people down, and nobody's listening to them to help them do a better job and also feel part of the team. And
absolutely,
it's so vitally important today, especially as as tough as it is right now to get good employees in, good team members in. Why wouldn't you want to take good care of those people, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's incredible. So, Tiffani Bova, Global Customer Growth and Innovation Evangelist for Salesforce, a Wall Street Journal best-selling author, and now book number 2, which is The Experience Mindset, Changing the Way You Think About Growth. Folks, this is a book that you're going to want to get for sure if you are leading a team, if you're leading a company, if you're a small business, if you're a medium-sized business, if you're a big business. This is the kind of content that you need to come in contact with immediately. Read it, digest it, and then put it into practice. And maybe your sales will go up 50%, right? So thank you, Tiffani, so much for joining us. Right below this interview, you'll see a link to be able to order the book, and I would highly recommend you do that. It's an awesome book, as was her first one. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of The Small Business Show.